Welcome to Real Talk. I'm Audrey Schroeder.
And I'm Aaron Stolze.
Today we're going to be talking about animation, specifically animation coming up in the year 2014. Now we've already talked about the Lego movie on a recent episode, Aaron, but we haven't covered animation as a whole, as a genre, as a media type. So the Lego movie, like we said, very successful movie. Broke a lot of box office records. You have a lot of interesting animation styles because it looks like it's made with Legos, but it was all animated.
Right. And it's something that it was very heavy on CGI, actually. Now, like I said earlier, I'm really familiar with stop motion, things like that, which the Lego movie, when it was made to look just like stop motion, but behind the scenes, there's actually a lot of CGI work that goes into it. It's all post-production effects. So instead of sitting there and placing Legos back and forth, it was all done in a computer animated system. So they can animate, okay, we need these blocks to be here. There weren't actually any physical Legos built on the set at all.
Right, and as far as CGI goes, it's become the norm for animation. When we talk about movies like Frozen, which also came out this year, end of last year, but Frozen was CGI animation, which is the way that Disney Pixar has gone. Mr. Peabody and Sherman, which was DreamWorks movie, and they actually took a big hit on that movie. They did not perform as well at the box office as they expected.
They did, that's right. And it's one of those movies that we all saw, okay, yeah, it's coming out, but nobody really rushed to the theaters when it came out. I think DreamWorks took a hit on some like $47 million back just on that film alone.
Which is a lot of money, and animation's not a cheap it's not a cheap thing to do comparatively.
Not at all.
And because you spend all that time in post-production, and it can take just as long or longer as it does to make a live-action movie.
Absolutely. And in fact, for a studio, doing an animated movie can almost be a risk at times. When you think about, you've got this great concept, you've got a great storyline, but that's the thing about an animated movie is some people think, oh, well, it's not that much work because you're not worried about, having so many people on set, you don't have to worry about camera, but in all honesty, when it comes to casting and putting the crew, there's a lot of professional work that goes into these kind of things. So when you make an animated movie, there's risks involved. Is it really going to appeal to your audience? Is all of this work going to go where you need it to? And that's what's scary about an animated movie in any studios, which, however, on the same token, that's the way they're all going. Like you said, Frozen came out. Disney Studios is producing things like Brave. DreamWorks is doing things like How to Train Your Dragon. I mean, it used to be all 2D animation, but especially in the last 10 years or so, where the CGI technology has really started to grow, animation it's taken off.
And Toy Story really was the first one that shifted into the CGI versus the 2D animation. And Miyazaki is one of the only people still doing the 2D animation. He's Studio Ghibli, the Japanese partner of Disney, essentially.
Exactly.
And so they still do the 2D animation, which we saw The Wind Rises come out from them earlier this year.
Right.
It was supposed to be his last movie, and he's got reportedly like a TV series in the works, but that's about it for Miyazaki. And the movie performed well relatively.
It did.
Studio Ghibli's got a really good reputation, I think.
Oh, yes.
When it comes to animated movies, as with marketing, the audiences don't think that they're just marketed towards children, which is why the studios think that things are such a big risk.
Exactly, yeah, and that's another thing about not just Miyazaki, but just sometimes animated movies in general. Sometimes people can get the perception that, okay, a movie's coming out and it's animated. It's not live action, therefore it must be marketed towards children. And to be completely honest, that's not how it works at all. Miyazaki is a perfect example. His movies in the past, whether it's Kiki's Delivery Service, Howl's Moving Castle, which is actually based off of a novel, although they were animated films, they weren't directed specifically towards children at all. I mean, sure, you can argue that all of the movies are usually kid-friendly, things like that, but that's no different than any other family film. So for Miyazaki, for example, in a lot of his movies, there's a lot of different elements that go into it to make it more than just a children's movie. I mean, especially when it comes to character development, things like that. Take Toy Story, for example. I mean, even all of us university students in our 20s, we could still go back and watch Toy Story and think of it more as just a movie about toys. And a lot of animated movies really strive for that, and I think a lot of them succeed, but it's just the perception we have in our minds that makes you think that, oh, it's just a children's movie. And I think a lot of the movie studios that were coming out today, they're starting to move past that because all of us have started to grow up with animated movies and, you know, CGI and things like that. So Frozen, for example, just destroyed the box office. It did phenomenally well. And part of that is due to the fact that more than just children went out to go see it.
And that's partly with Disney Pixar's reputation. And when you talk about things like that, there's a lot of market appeal that comes in with making sequels because they already decided to sign on for Frozen 2. So, you know, looking at this year's movies and the movies coming out this year, you've got sequels. You got Planes 2, Fire and Rescue, which is another in the Cars franchise. You've got Rio 2 that came out recently. It's doing reasonably well at the box office. If you like Despicable Me, there's a Minion movie is coming out at the end of the year in December.
Which should be the third installment in that universe.
Absolutely, but it's focusing solely on the little yellow minions, you know. But the big one coming out this year that I'm really excited for is How to Train Your Dragon 2 is coming out from DreamWorks.
Yes, How to Train Your... I remember the first one came out, which absolutely blew my mind. It's something that I mean, yes, we knew it was coming out, and I saw some of the previews for it. Wasn't really hooked all that much. Thought, oh, you know, I'll see it when it comes to DVD. And DreamWorks just went above and beyond, and to the point where some people, you know, Disney Pixar's a leading name. They said it was Disney quality work, if not better. And yeah, the movie was phenomenal. I know the success of the movie was so huge that they actually launched a television series, a children's TV show, after a couple of years after the movie came out, and that is still going today, I believe. But yeah, How to Train Your Dragon 2 is getting ready to come out, is in production right now. I believe it's actually done. And
they're
we're
in
just
post,
sitting on it now.
They're in post and they're ready to go, and that'll be coming out here in a few months. And the story focuses on, if you saw the first one, Hiccup was an underachieving Viking.
The
His dad was
of the tribe,
clan leader, and you know, he wanted to research dragons. You know, wanted to kill dragons to please his father, but then ends up meeting a dragon and trains it, learns to ride it. Changes everything for the Vikings. So now we have the second movie where the dragons and the humans live together and it's the norm, and this is 5 years in the future, and the animation really did a great job showcasing that. If you've seen any of the trailers, the characters really aged differently. And so, you know, it's Hiccup and all of his friends, and they're, you know, dragon riding and playing contact sports with their dragons and things like that. And Hiccup and Toothless end up going out and exploring, finding a whole bunch of new kinds of dragons and a mysterious dragon rider. So I'm looking forward to see what it has in store for us. The first one was a really good blend of comedy and action, I think. So
definitely, oh yeah, and I loved it. And speaking of sequels, it was announced that one of my favorite animated movies of all time is finally getting its sequel, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. And I could not be more excited. So
the first one, completely ridiculous, but yes, the second SpongeBob movie coming out early next year, February 2015. Reportedly having Steven Hillenburg, the original writer, come back for it to do it again. And I mean, the first one was completely ridiculous.
I mean,
David
what
Hasselhoff.
more could you possibly expect from a SpongeBob SquarePants movie? The television show itself is absolutely ridiculous. The story of this little yellow sponge, I mean, we all know the story, who lives in a pineapple under the sea. I mean, how much more outrageous can we get? So yeah, the first movie came out, had the blend. David Hasselhoff made a performance, live action, which was just, ridiculous. For lack of better description, blew us all out of the water.
SpongeBob coming up, yeah, and it's going to be interesting. It should be another good one. Oh yeah, it's one of the few cartoons that's kind of had resiliency in the last 10 years. It's really
lasted the test of time. It really has.
And other things to look forward to coming up soon, Legends of Oz, Dorothy's Return, follows Dorothy. She gets called back to Oz in post-tornado Kansas to save her friends from a new villain, the Jester, who's going to be voiced by Martin Short. Has a penchant for playing wacky villains. Another one that I'm excited for, it's been advertised for a long time, we're talking about stop motion, The Box Trolls. It's coming out from the same studio that produced Coraline and Paranorman, which was a really big success recently.
I really enjoyed Paranorman, which was something I really felt like it was very underrated at the box office. I went out there and I didn't really know the studio too well, but after I saw Paranorman, I went out to see Caroline and the rest of them, and they're good movies.
They're
really
definitely interesting movies, and they're kind of dark in the vein of Tim Burton in that sense a lot of the time. But it's really enjoyable. When The Box Trolls should be no different. It's based on a book, but it's a story about an orphan that gets taken in by these creatures, the Box Trolls, that are trash collectors, hence the name. They kind of build bodies and stuff for themselves out of trash. But he's saving his friends from an exterminator who's going to be voiced by Ben Kingsley.
Interesting.
And it should be a really interesting movie, and it's boasting a host of British stars: Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, Richard Ayoade, a whole bunch of British comedians in this movie. So it should be a really good thing to look forward to. I think the last big one for the year, though, is going to be Disney Pixar's next movie, which is called Big Hero 6. And it's the first time the animation studio is taking advantage of the Marvel team up.
That's right. That's where I recognize the name from. You say it, and I'm like, oh, where have I heard that before? Marvel owns that name, and yeah, since the Disney Marvel buyout, I guess they've had all of these characters they've been sitting on, and I know that's one thing we've been really looking forward to, is wondering, okay, we're making the big movies, we're making the Avengers, we've done that whole line, but what are they going to do with some of the smaller characters? I know they had rumors to do some Netflix shorts and things like that, but I guess this is the first big jump into utilizing that half of the universe.
As far as animation goes, it's something that we should be looking forward to. It's going to follow a guy named Hero and his robot sidekick Bimax, and they have to team up with a team of unlikely superheroes. So looking forward to that. It's Disney, Pixar, Disney, Marvel.
Oh yeah.
You know what else you have to look forward to?
Disney, Pixar, Marvel. What could possibly go wrong?
You have to look forward to the soundtracks with these movies. Things like How to Train Your Dragon 2. First one had a great soundtrack. Second one's going to have a great soundtrack, we hope. And the Disney Pixar movies, you expect the same thing. But for that, we have our soundtrack specialist.
So I guess we'll throw it over to Jess. Jess, take it away.
In the world of animated movies, the music that first comes to mind is usually boisterous, heartfelt musical numbers with catchy, expressive lyrics. Does Let It Go ring a bell? But we can't let the prevalence of the animated movie musical take away from the appreciation of their scores. That's right, animated movies have music without words too, and they wouldn't be the same without it. Take Audrey and Aaron's example of How to Train Your Dragon. John Powell, the score's composer, layered traditional Celtic instruments from penny whistles to bagpipes over a sweeping orchestral bass. It earned Powell his first Oscar nomination, but more importantly, really drew the audience into the world DreamWorks created. That idea of using music to help flesh out an animated universe was explored by Pixar also. In The Incredibles, for example, producer Brad Bird said he wanted a sound reminiscent of a 1960s vision of the future. To find that, he went to the 1960s themselves, seeking out John Barry, who composed the theme to the 1969 Bond film On Her Majesty's Secret Service. As it turns out, Barry didn't want to work in the same style as his retro pieces, so the honor went to Michael Giacchino instead. When Giacchino retrofitted Barry's iconic James Bond sound for the animated feature, the audience instantly understood the kind of world our secret superhero family was living in, and it was resonant enough to earn Giacchino a Grammy nomination. Of course, both these movies have sequels coming out pretty soon, but you can bet we won't have to wait for them to catch more great scores coming out of the animated film industry. Stick around, everyone, because we've got more real talk for you after the break.
But it would be safe to keep your distance until there's no secret that will make you smile. Reliable sources say that chicken soup has found their way out of this dangerous, but it will be safe until they are returned.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Clean kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Mom, can we get some ice cream? Please, Mom, please.
No, we're having dinner soon.
Please.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
Hey folks, welcome back to Real Talk. We were just talking about animated movies and all the effort that really goes into making them too. So, which is something we were just discussing.
We're going to do that again. Yes.
Okay.
One, go.
Hey folks, welcome back to Real Talk, where we were just talking about CGI and animated movies. So on the topic of something we were just trying to discuss earlier was all the effort that goes into them, you know, all the pre-production, all the planning, all the post-production, all of the voice casting, things like that. And that's another big aspect is voice acting alone. That's huge when it comes to doing an animated movie because the face of the characters are all pre-planned out. So you've got characters, you know, they're all sketched in the storybooks, you've artists working on them, full teams on a single character's facial expressions. So a character's voice is very important with how they perform in a movie, especially an animated film.
Right, right. And there are people out there who are specifically, they are voice actors. That is their profession. A lot of the times though, especially with movies, you don't get those voice actors. You get big names who do voice acting for the movie. So it ends up being kind of a weird toss-up and people don't always recognize the voice actors. But to find out about voice actors, I decided to hit the street this week and ask some people some questions. Do you know any of the voice actors that are in the movies that you've watched before?
I know that Jeremy Irons played Scar in Lion King, and that blew my mind.
I know sometimes they get pretty big names for the dubs in Studio Ghibli films, like I know Dakota Fanning and Ellie Fanning are in Totoro. And apparently Joseph Gordon-Levitt is doing the voice acting for The Wind Rises, but not specific voice actors.
Voice actors, I know in the movie Mr. Burns and Smithers is played by, I don't know, I know more faces rather than names, but Hank Azaria, that's his name. So Hank Azaria, I remember his name.
I couldn't tell you their names. I'm terrible with names when it comes to actors. But the guy that played on Cheers, the postman, he's on everything. Yeah, everything Pixar. So,
John Ratzenberger.
Frank Welker, I know is a big one.
The only voice actor I know by name is when David Tennant was a voice actor in How to Train Your Dragon.
Nope. I know Christian Bale did the voice as Hal. Let's see here. No, not offhand. You have to give me some time to think about it.
Possibly. The one girl that does the voice of Mabel on Gravity Falls, and that's about it.
All right, so as you can see, people naming a lot of movie stars there, but not really any specific voice actors, except for Frank Welker was mentioned, and he has done voice acting as a profession, but if we're going to talk about voice acting, you got to talk about Mel Blanc. He did almost all of the original Looney Tunes, including some of the girls, and he's just a giant as far as the voice acting industry is concerned.
He's a legend when it comes to voice acting, really, especially doing the Looney Tunes. I mean, I grew up listening to his voice. And that's the thing is, I've known his voice for practically as long as I can remember, but when it comes to matching a face, I really can't draw anything in my memory.
Right, and that's the thing is that you hear the voice, you know you've heard it before, but you don't know a face to put with that, and so they stay relatively unnamed as far as that goes in a career. And you know, when you're talking about animated movies, animated TV shows is really where they all kind of get their start. A big one right now is H. John Benjamin. That's the voice of Sterling Archer in the series of the same name. The voice of Bob in Bob's Burgers.
Instantly recognizable. And he's got one of those very distinct voices that as you hear it, you're like, oh, you know immediately. That's H. John Benjamin. You know that's him. And you know, there's a lot of characters like that. For example, man, what's his name? Tom Carey? Is that him? I want to say
what does he voice?
SpongeBob SquarePants.
Of course.
Yes,
he has a very distinct voice. He does the Ice King on Adventure Time as well.
Yeah, another example. Once again, who's someone who started working in children's animation, and he kind of stuck with children's television too, because he's got that very distinct voice, and it works perfectly well. But once again, I really can't match a face. So I mean, it's only natural for people to think, oh, who's your favorite voice actor? You're like, oh, Christian Bale, because it's a face they know, it's a face and voice they're familiar with, and it's really hard for folks to match up. Who do they think of without really seeing who they think of?
Right, and it's a profession that goes under-recognized a lot, and it's a really small industry too, because like we said just there, both of those voice actors we just named are doing multiple voices, and H. John Benjamin does multiple voices in the same show. It's a really common practice. Another famous voice actor, Tara Strong, she's done a lot of voices for different things. Raven in Teen Titans is a big one. She does Twilight Sparkle in My Little Pony. Bubbles and Powerpuff Girls. Whole bunch of different voices, but she has a bunch of background characters on her shows too. And and you're not limited by gender because of animation. She did the voice of Timmy Turner in Fairly Odd Parents too.
Exactly.
So voice acting's a really interesting profession to get in, but a lot of under-recognized names as far as that go. And the two ways you can go with voice acting are the one, have a really recognizable voice, like we said, H. John Benjamin. His name's John DiMaggio, who did Bender and Jake from Adventure Time, Bender from Futurama, has a really distinct voice. Or you can have the ability to create all these different voices, like Tara Strong does.
Exactly. And voice acting as a career, it's really hard to get off and take off, but the folks that do have a distinct voice and can really alternate their voice in so many different ways, as you're saying, a lot of these voice actors do just dozens of characters that they come up with, which you might not, you listen to it and you don't think, oh, that's the same person. And to have the ability to have all of these different voices at your disposal is a huge talent. And when in animated movies, you've got voice actors, and then you've got people who work behind the scenes on like CGI and animating. Hand animation is something that used to be the norm, and since we've shifted over towards CGI, honestly, we really haven't lost track of that skill. It takes a lot of fine precision to think, especially keyframes and facial expressions. Frozen, for example, had there were just millions of facial expressions that as soon as we see, you can watch a 3-second segment, which is just 2 words that an animated character speaks. What you don't realize is that took weeks to animate. And CGI artists, and a lot of them were really big no-names out there, where you think, oh, well, who are the big stars of the movie? Oh, it's the voice actors. Oh, look, this person directed it. Hey, look, they wrote the soundtrack. But I'm a credits guy. Anytime I watch a movie, I'll stay, and I'm the one guy sitting at the very end of the theater who watches
all the names, all the little people that helped make it happen.
Key grip. I always wait to see who the key grips are, because you say, oh yeah, I was the key grip in Frozen. People are like, what? You use the keys? And either way, and there's a lot of people that go into it. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of people can work on a single film. And as the voice actors, even as unrecognized as they are, tend to be the faces of these big movies. I mean, we've got, it's hard to think off the top of my mind of anybody of my immediate memory that's worked CGI their whole lives. But just kind of a special shout out to those guys that have worked CGI over the years, because you are the real heroes of animated film.
And those names, we don't recognize them, but you're talking about keyframing and rendering, and I have worked on some 3D animation myself, and thanks Lindenwood for giving me that opportunity. But one of the movies that blew my mind was Tangled, because do you know how long it takes to render a single frame of that much hair? And to get it all to move correctly and to react with the environment correctly. And I'm a fan of, I go on YouTube and I watch all the special little features that they make about all the mistakes that happen. Because it is hilarious to watch some of the mistakes with the hair going through objects and through people. And it's kind of horrifying to watch that. But you're going, wow, that really took a long time, and I wonder how many times that happened before they got the kinks worked out. But that's why you have thousands of animators credited for these movies, because it's a group effort the whole time.
It really is. It takes an army. It literally takes an army to get something like this done. And like you're saying, the hair, I remember the first big article I read was back when Shrek came out. When Eddie Murphy is Donkey, then they put all of that effort into animating the individual hairs on Donkey. It was an entire team of donkey hair credits.
They're weird credits in the movies for animation. The hair team, texture team. There's several different texture teams because texture's weird too. But that's not to say that 2D animation isn't difficult, because who wants to draw things frame by frame? That's absolutely crazy to think about. And talking about Disney movies, and I just remember reading the other day that in Hercules they wore out something like 20,000 sheets of paper animating that movie.
Wow.
It's just a ridiculous number to think about as far as that goes, because it's 20,000 sheets of paper.
Exactly. I can barely write a paragraph without getting a hand cramp and having to stop for 10 minutes. So thinking of going through all of that, it's a lot of effort. And I mean, animated movies really haven't died all that much out. I mean, for example, when we made the CGI jump, Disney's really known for really doing really good both 2D and 3D work. So, which
if we're gonna talk about 2D animation, it brings us to the DVD of the week, which I have with me here.
Oh boy.
Treasure Planet.
Treasure Planet.
You're probably going, wow, that's not the movie I thought she was going to pull out, because, it's a Disney movie. It's one of my favorite Disney movies.
I love Treasure Planet.
It's honestly a really underappreciated movie as far as that goes, because this was one of the first ones that really incorporated CGI with a Disney 2D animated movie. If you're not familiar with the movie, Treasure Planet. It's Treasure Island in space.
Basically.
Space pirates.
Space pirates. Where can you go wrong? But yeah, I mean, I love this movie growing up. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt actually voice acts
Teenage Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Exactly. Back in the day. And which, as we just talked about voice actors being stars, that's pretty ironic. But yeah, he goes out on this adventure. He comes across this strange artifact, and it sets him off on this adventure with all of these mismatched characters. And then it's Treasure Island in space, if you're not familiar with the story. But they put a lot of different twists on it and to make it a Disney film, and it's one of my favorites. Once again, lasted the test of time.
Well, and it's definitely one that not a lot of people talk about anymore. It's definitely one that didn't get a lot of hype when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you like science fiction, if you like space, if you like any sort of treasure hunt adventure, because that's what this is, it's, young Jim Hawkins gets a treasure map from a pirate who then dies in his arms, and his mother's inn gets burned down by the pirates that were following him. And he sets off on this adventure with the Dr. Doppler, who's voiced by David Hyde Pierce, which is hilarious in and of itself. Emma Thompson does the voice of the Captain Amelia. She's like a cat person. And then the pirates take over, and you've got Long John Silver and his crew and spider people and different things. It's just crazy space adventure.
Really enjoy it, really love it. So I guess that's
all we have for DVD of the week, so you know what it's time for.
Oh, I know what it's time for. The Movie Minute.
The cast list for Star Wars Episode 7 was recently released, confirming the return of Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford, reprising their original roles, along with the original actors for Chewbacca, C-3PO, and R2-D2.
Speaking of the new cast, a few familiar names are to join the Star Wars universe, including Max von Sydow, Domhnall Gleeson, and Andy Serkis, who's well known for his CGI roles such as Gollum from the Lord of the Rings films.
Warner Brothers announced that they plan to produce a big-screen Justice League film in 2018, following Batman vs. Superman in 2016. Questions remain up in the air about the full cast. These movies will be the first of 11 scheduled for Warner Brothers.
The wildly successful series Assassin's Creed now has a director for its big-screen adaptation. New Regency in its talks with Justin Kurzel for the adaptation.
British actor Bob Hoskins died recently at the age of 71. The star is known for his roles in Hook, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Super Mario Bros.
Disney Pixar's superhero animated film Big Hero 6 has just revealed its cast of voice actors. SNL alum Maya Rudolph Slated is voiced one of the main characters alongside Jamie Chung and...
you ran out of time.
Ran out of time. Oh, well. Folks, that's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us on Real Talk. Once again, I'm Aaron Stolze.
And I'm Audrey Schroeder.
Take it easy, folks.
We'll see you next time.